I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on adjectives that compare. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts. We're doing grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of adjectives that compare. All right, so our chapter is adjectives that compare. Our subject is English Language Arts. We're doing grade 6. And in the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of adjectives that compare is to form and use comparative and superlative adjectives. All right, so when it comes to adjectives that compare, firstly, an adjective tells us more about the noun. So adjectives that tell us more about a noun, it either describes a noun or it modifies a noun. So now we see nouns are people, places, and things. And when it comes to an adjective that compare, right? Then it makes it adjectives that compare two or more people, it compares places, and compares things. All right. So when it comes to adjectives that compare, we have a comparative adjective and we have a superlative adjective. So with adjectives that compare, we have comparative adjective and we have superlative adjectives. All right. So we have comparative adjectives, and comparative adjectives, it compares a thing or group to some other thing or group. So firstly, we said adjectives. We use adjectives to compare people, places, or things, and we have a comparative adjective, which compares a thing, a group. It compares a thing or group to someone or something in a group or to another group. So we said comparative adjectives compares a thing, or it compares a group or some other thing or group. It compares the one thing to another thing. All right. So when it if you look at an example of a comparative adjective, right? An example of a comparative adjective. Oh wait, let's say at least first we say a comparative adjective. It always ends with an er. For example, if I say that Jake is fast, then now we're going to either compare Jake to someone else, and we then say that Jake is faster. He's faster than John. And that is a comparative adjective because it basically compares two people, two animals, or two places, or two things. Then we have our superlative adjective. And the superlative adjectives, it compares a thing or group of things to the large group that it is part of. Now it's being compared to a larger group. And the superlative adjective, it always ends with est. So we say we have superlative adjectives that compares a thing or group of things to a larger group or that it is part of. And superlative adjectives end in est. Comparative adjectives ends in er. And when it comes to superlative adjective, we add est to make it a superlative adjective. And if we look at an example, right? Here we have a base word, then we have the comparative word, so that's the base word. Then we have the comparative word, and then we have the superlative word. All right, so we see that here we have our base word. It's like saying fast is our base word. Then we have a comparative adjective. If we were to compare it to another person or thing, then we said it is faster or taller. And if we are comparing it to a larger group, more than two people, and then we can say it's fastest. So fast, faster, fastest. All right. So keeping in mind when it comes to comparative adjective, we also have the base word. All right. So when it comes to adjectives that compare, right? If you look at the word, the base word smart, if you look at the base word smart, what is the comparative adjective and what is the superlative adjective of smart? If we were to compare someone to another person, smart, what is the comparative adjective of smart and the superlative adjective of smart? Hi, I'm good and you. All right. So if we have the word smart, if we were to show the comparative form of the word smart, then the comparative form of the word smart is smarter. Because you said we add an er. And then if we were to look for the comparative word of the word smart, they would say the smartest. That is our base word. All right. So once again, we said we have adjectives that compare. It compares either two people doing something or it compares two or more people that does something. And when we do, we have our base word. All right. So we said that when it comes to comparative adjectives, we add an ER because we're comparing two people, two things, or two places. All right. And we said that we will give you the base word, the word that can stand on its own, then the comparative form, and then the dialogue. Um, then the superlative. All right. So now, when it comes to superlative adjective, let's say, for example, we have one person and we are comparing the ability of that one person to the rest of the group. And then that is a superlative adjective. All right. So we're now going to look at we're going to a+students.ca and we are going to then form and use comparative and superlative adjectives. Yes, before we go, we have short, shorter, shortest. That is correct. So short is our base word. Then we have shorter, which is our comparative adjective. We compare two people. And then we have shortest. And that is where we, for example, are being compared to the whole group. Yeah, so small, smallest, smallest. Yes, somebody put heavy, heavier, heaviest. So well done. Old, older, oldest. And then we have tall, taller, tallest. All right. So now we're going to a plus students.ca, and we're going to form and use comparative and superlative adjectives. All right. So now we are going to complete the sentence with the correct comparative or superlative adjective. It says in the novel Frankenstein, in the novel Frankenstein, author Mary Shelley makes readers, do we say sympathetic to the narrator than to the main character, Dr. Frankenstein. All right, so now we said we can use adjectives to compare people, places, and things. All right, so now we're going to our test. Or before we go to our test, right? It says after. So also when it comes to superlative and when it also comes to superlative as well as comparative adjectives, then we can also use words like most and we can use the words more. All right. So we said that when it also comes to superlative and comparative adjectives, we can also add more and we can also add most to the word. So we can add more and most to the word. So if our word is as more than one syllable, and then we, for example, say that, the person is more intelligent, and we add most in front of the superlative adjective. So more or most, more sympathetic or the most sympathetic. All right, so we said we have, let's have example, we say we have intelligent because the person is intelligent, the person is smart, but intelligent because it is more than one syllable. Then we say the person is more intelligent. And if the person is like extremely intelligent, then we say you are the most intelligent. All right, so now we're going to our test. All right, so we need to complete the sentence with the correct comparative or superlative sentence. This is not a test. It says the molasses cookie that Lindsay bought at the bake sale was, do we say it was moist than the brownie? Or do we say it was moister than the brownie? And the molasses cookie that Lindsay bought at the bake sale, do we say it was moist than the brownies or it was moister than the brownies? And if we were to check the correct answer, then we would say it was moister. Well done. Than the brownie. Moister. Well done. The next one says, according to the news report. So, according to the news report I saw yesterday, last summer was the, do we say it was the cool summer on record? Or do we say it was the coolest summer on record? So, the cool summer on record or coolest summer on record? So, option one or option two? And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will say it was the coolest summer on record. Coolest. And we will say that we need to say if it's a comparative or a superlative adjective. When Tina was a baby, she had the plump cheeks of all four kids in the family. Or do we say she had the plumpest cheeks of all four kids in the family? So the plump or plumpest. So option one, plump, or option two, plumpest. So plumpest little rosy cheeks. And if we were to choose the correct one, we would say that when Tina was a baby, she had the plumpest cheeks of all four kids in her family. Plumpest. So we need to say if it's a comparative adjective. All right, so if we were to choose the correct option, we would choose option two, the plumpest cheeks of all four kids. All right, so we need to complete the sentence with the correct either comparative or superlative adjectives. All right, so we say Miss Chapman. We say Miss Chapman prefers living in California because the climate is much, do we say mild or much milder than in Minnesota, where she grew up? So we say Mr. Chapman prefers living in California because the climate is much mild or milder. Which one correct? Mild or milder than in Minnesota, where she grew up. All right, so we say Mr. Chapman prefers living in California because the climate is much, do we say mild or milder? Mild or milder? All right, so if we were to choose the correct option, we will say it is milder. All right, so milder is correct. Correct. It says of all the contestants on the game, the gentleman from Detroit had Do we say broad knowledge of international affairs, broad, or they had broadest international knowledge, knowledge of international affairs? They had broad knowledge, or they had broader knowledge of international affairs. So is it option one broad, or is it option two broadest knowledge? Broad knowledge or broadest knowledge? Had the broad knowledge or had the broadest knowledge? So broad or broadest. And if we were to choose the correct option, then it says of all the contestants on the game show, the gentleman from Detroit had the broadest knowledge of international affairs, meaning he had the most knowledge. We need to complete the sentence with the correct comparative, whether superlative or comparative. Weasley's explanation of the water cycle is so much, do we say brief, than the one in the biology book, or it is much. Weasley's explanation of the water cycle is was much briefer than the one in the biology textbook. So brief or briefer. So brief or briefer. Which one is correct? All right. And if we were to choose the correct one, the correct either superlative or comparative adjective, then we can say Wesley's explanation of the water cycle was much briefer than the one in the biology textbook. Briefer. And the molasses cookie that Gwen bought at the bake sale was, do we say it was moist than the brownie or it was moister than the brownie? Which one is correct? Moist or moister than the brownie? All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, we will say it is moister. All right. One more. It says Brandy was the. So well done. Moister. Now it says Brandy was the alert of all the campers on the trip because she got the most rest, or she was the most alert of all the campers on the trip because she got the most rest. All right. Remember we said also when our word, right? Brandy was the was alert. or most alert. So if our word has got one syllable, we either say alert, alerter, alertist. But if that word has got more than two or more syllables, and then we either add more to our comparative adjective or we add most to our superlative adjective. All right, and we can say Brandy was the most alert of all the campers on the trip, meaning she was awake, she was looking after the others. All right, so when it comes to adjectives that compare, we said we have comparative adjectives and we have superlative adjectives. Comparative adjectives, it compares two people, compares to places, to compares to things. All right. And when it comes to our superlative and comparative adjectives, we said with comparative adjectives, we compare two, either two people, two places, or two things for another. And then with the superlative adjectives, we compare more than two things, right? And then if the our word, right, is has two or more syllables, then we add more to our comparative adjectives in front of that word, and most in front of that word shows a superlative adjective. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on adjectives that compare. We have comparative and superlative adjectives, and we had to form and use comparative and superlative adjectives. So, this is now the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade 6, for joining the class, and I really hope that you are going to have a good evening further. So, till next time, goodbye. Bye, everybody.